sometime got a vegetarian coming for dinner, don't lose heart. You can go wild on salads and have a wonderful time. You can start out with a little French hors d'oeuvre of tomatoes à la vinaigrette, and then you can have a main course of a tremendous combination salad with everything you can think of it in, and you can end up with a crown of endive. And you may like it so well that you'll turn into a vegetarian yourself when you see salad fixings next time on The French Chef.
The French Chef is made possible by a grant from Hills Brothers Coffee Incorporated and a grant from the Polaroid Corporation.
Here's the familiar salad combination of iceberg lettuce, tomatoes, and cucumber. But if you venture a little further down the supermarket aisle, you'll run into Boston lettuce and romaine and escarole and chicory. So come on down the garden path with me when we do salad fixings today on The French Chef. Welcome to The French Chef. I'm Julia Child. You know, the French take salad very seriously indeed. In fact, they attach such importance to it that they serve it as a whole separate course. And it usually comes after the main course. And that's so you can refresh your palate before you go on to the great big dessert. And what can be more refreshing than beautiful, crisp salad greens properly dressed? And of course, the most important part is the greens. And I've got a little display of lettuce for you to see. And this is the all-American iceberg lettuce. I've never seen it in France. Maybe they have it there, but I've never seen it. Anyway, the important thing is when you buy it, be sure that the head is tightly closed and the greens are moist and crisp. And when you open it up like this, you have very nice little crisp. And it makes a nice crisp salad. It doesn't have as much, it has more texture than taste, I would say. And you have here a lovely salad, the Boston lettuce, which is nice and green, and it has a much tenderer, it's more of a tender leaf than a crisp one. And you see the shape of it, which is very pretty, and it's much greener, and it's quite a perishable lettuce, but a simply lovely one. And then you have other varieties of Boston lettuce like Bibb and oak leaf, and they're just all kinds of lettuce. I'm just bringing out the most familiar. And this great big long one is the romaine lettuce. The French word is just exactly the same, romaine. And it has a big long leaf, and it's nice and crisp, and it has a whitish rib here, and then a long green leaf. And this one keeps very nicely, and it's always crisp, and it has a very pleasant taste. And then you have your escarole, which looks rather like a Boston lettuce, but it has slightly tougher leaves. And it has a big a white rib and a lovely green leaf. And it has a very slightly bitter taste, which is awfully nice in combination with other salads. And then we have the chicory. Some people call this curly endive, and in France it's called chicorée frisée, or frizzy. And as you can see, the leaf of it, it is frizzy. There are little points that come out of it. And it also has a white back part, and then the green leaves. And it also has a very slightly bitter taste, and it is lovely in combination with others or all by itself. And it's always so pretty. And so as a combination, you can have your iceberg and your Boston lettuce and your long romaine and your escarole and your frizzy lettuce or chicory. And these can all be used in one salad if you like. And I think the interest in the salad is, well, it's mainly in having everything wonderfully crisp, but I think a combination is a great deal of fun to do. And if you've gone to all the trouble to buy very fresh greens and make sure that they look moist and fresh and crisp, then you have the problem of keeping them fresh and crisp when you get home. And if you don't have time to wash the salad right away, you can put it in your hydrator drawer in the refrigerator, or you can put it in a big plastic bag. And the Boston lettuce usually doesn't need washing if the head is crisp, but all the other ones need washing. So I'll show you how I like to do it. We'll take the tender Boston leaf, and this one have a big sink filled with cold water, and hold it up by the tip, and then just take a little knife and cut all around the root, and loosen the leaves and let them fall into the water, and then lift them up and down with your hands. And the idea is to let all the sand go down to the bottom. And be sure that you have all the sand and dirt off of the lettuce leaves, because it's terrible to crunch down. And then after you've thoroughly washed it, you have to dry the lettuce, because you can't dress wet lettuce, you have a wet dressing. And some people like to use a salad basket. These come from France, and you can get them in many of the stores. And then you lift the lettuce out with your hands and put it into the basket. And after you've had any wilted leaves, you of course cut them off, and then you shake off the excess water, and then you just swing it around, round, round, and water gets all over the kitchen, so you usually have to do this outside. I don't frankly like the salad basket very much at all, because it's so much work. I like to take a big colander like this and lift the lettuce from the water into the colander, and then just shake it a little bit to get off the excess water. And then I take a great big towel and spread the lettuce in that. And you have to be very gentle with Boston lettuce, because these leaves are so delicate, and then gently fold the towel up over it. If you have a big lot of lettuce, you'd have to probably shake it in colander in two batches, and then put it on the towel, and then put another towel over it, and then put it in the refrigerator, and then it will crisp up as it dries, and it should stay for about an hour or two. And then if you're not going to make the salad right away, put it in a plastic bag. Now let's look at some of these other ones. Here's the romaine. I'm going to cut this in half so you'll see how it looks. And you see there's a big central stalk there, and as the leaves go up, they get smaller and smaller, and you have this lovely tender heart of the romaine. And you can serve the romaine either in great big long leaves like this. That would be really much too long. So what you usually do with the long leaves, you can either tear them, or you can take a knife and cut them. Some people think that it's desecration to cut lettuce with a knife. I don't. But you do whatever system you feel is right. And then we have our escarole, this great big head. And this again, you have the tenderer leaves down towards the center of the head, which are just delicious. And the big leaves are a little bit tough. You can use escarole for cooking or for salad making. And if you're going to cook it, you could use the outer leaves and cook them like spinach, and then use the inner leaves in a salad. And then we have our chicory. The British, just to mix everybody up, call chicory endive, but in French, chicory is chicorée. And again, you have this lovely tender heart here for salad makings. And again, you can cook the leaves just like spinach. And all of these you would wash exactly the way we did our Boston lettuce, and dry them the same way. And then we have the iceberg lettuce. And you can, I think if you want to separate this, take a little knife and cut right into the root. And this is a very tightly held. And take off any large leaves, and then with your finger, just go and pull it apart, and you have a little cup that you can use to put vegetable salad in it. And with iceberg, I don't ever wash it unless it seems dirty, because it doesn't seem necessary. Why go to all that bother? And then if you want what they call a chiffonade of lettuce, if you wanted, say, to put a chicken salad on top of it, you take a big knife and just cut it down into thin strips. And a thin strip is called a chiffonade. I suppose it looks like chiffon, but I don't see that it does. Anyway, that is the name for it. And as long as we're on the lettuce beam, we might as well include parsley and watercress. And this is watercress. These are little tiny leaves on stems, and they always come wrapped up in a bunch. And you can use the whole of the watercress, and it has a very slightly peppery taste, and it's perfectly delicious. Maybe it's an acquired taste, but it's awfully good. And with the watercress, as soon as you get it, because it's very perishable, if you have a big sink full of water, just dip it in the water, or else just run it under cold water and then shake off the excess water, and then wrap it in a paper towel. You see it's still wet. And then take a piece of paper towel and just wrap it up in that, and then put it in a plastic bag, and then put it in the refrigerator. And I found that this is a very good system. You can either do this or you can submerge it entirely in water. And then when you come to parsley, you've got two types. This is the usual type of parsley that you see, which is crinkly. And then you have the other parsley, which is the Italian parsley, which has a flat leaf. And the Italian parsley has more flavor, but it doesn't chop up quite as neatly, I don't think. And the frizzy parsley is really better for decorations if you're going to have, a decoration of parsley sprigs. And to wash the parsley, do exactly the same way. Stick it in a basin of water, just the same way as we did the watercress, and then shake out all the water, and then wrap that in paper towels. I read this method in Gourmet magazine, and I've used it ever since, and I find that my parsley is kept beautifully in the refrigerator for, 5 or 6 days. And then that also would go in the plastic bag in the refrigerator. But now, after you have your greens wonderfully washed and you have kept them as crisp as possible, you are ready to make your salad. But it's a terrible thing if you've gone to all the trouble of keeping your greens fresh and nice, and then you let them go around improperly dressed. And there's really nothing easier to make than a good French dressing. And some people like to put all the greens right in the bowl and then make the salad dressing in a spoon and then pour it in and toss it up. It's very dramatic, but I don't like to do it that way because I like to know exactly how my dressing is going to taste. So I make it separately, either in the bowl or in a small jar. And I'm going to make about 1/3 cup of French dressing. So I'm going to use about 1/4 teaspoon of salt. And then if you like the taste, you can use some mustard. And I'm going to use about almost a teaspoon of dry mustard, or you could use the wet French type mustard. That's a very nice taste, I think. And then comes your vinegar and or lemon juice. And I like a good red wine vinegar, and that is, you just have to taste vinegars and see which ones you like the best, because this is very important that you get the best quality you can. And you can only tell that by tasting it. So I'm going to put in 3/4 of a tablespoon of vinegar, and then 3/4 of a tablespoon of lemon juice. I just put the lemon in my towel as usual and squeeze that in. And then stir it all around. Now this is very important if you're making the salad dressing in the bowl, because you want to be sure and dissolve your salt completely. And then you can start adding your oil. And you can use a tasteless salad oil or an olive oil. And this, again, is terribly important because your dressing is really only as good as your oil and vinegar. And I like to add it just drop by drop by drop, in a thin stream as this is going, and stir it around. And how much oil to add depends on your taste. Some people like 1 vinegar to 3 oil, but that makes a very strong sour dressing, and it's not good to serve if you are serving wine with your food because it absolutely kills the wine. So I use really about 5 or 6 tablespoons of oil to 1 tablespoon of vinegar. But it's entirely up to you. And then you've got that mixed. Take a little piece of lettuce and put it in your dressing and then taste it. Very good. Then at this point, you want to always try it on the lettuce. You know how it is, because you can't tell it just by in a spoon. And then if you need more oil, add it, and if you need more vinegar or salt, add it. And then this is just a very plain base, and you could add herbs if you like. If you're lucky enough to have a fresh herb garden, you would add chopped herbs and toss them in with the greens. And if you don't, you would add herbs at this point. And I'm going to put in some tarragon. I'm putting about half a teaspoon of fresh tarragon, which is very nice. So you could use basil or whatever else you like. I forgot that you not want to have some pepper in too, and the pepper you would add now. And then if you want another taste, you could put in either shallots, you know, those little tiny onions, or chopped scallion. Scallion is always a substitute for shallots, and I have some all chopped here. I'm going to put in about a tablespoon. I just like this little taste of the shallot along with it. And you can make the dressing ahead and just keep it in the bowl, and when you're ready to toss your salad, and you toss it only at the last minute, in go your nice fresh greens, and remember they're always dry. If they're wet, the salad dressing won't hold on them. Then, just toss it. In French, this is called fatiguer, and that doesn't mean you're supposed to tire the lettuce out. It means that you're just supposed to turn it enough so that you get the dressing over each leaf. And I'm using a glazed bowl, which we got down in Aubagne near Marseille. I used to, when I was first married, think that wooden bowls were just absolutely wonderful, and then I wondered why my salad tasted sort of rancid, and I realized that the oil got into the wood of the bowl, and the whole bowl was rancid, and it was just awful. And so now I always use a glazed bowl of some time. And then, if you want to have garlic in the dressing, as you may sometimes do, you take a clove of garlic and cut it in half and rub the bowl before you made the dressing in it. Or you could, again, with a half clove of garlic, rub it over a hard little piece of toast and rub it all over that and then toss it in with the salad, and that's very nice indeed. And now with the green salad, if you're going to do as the French do, you would serve this after the main course. And I think it's always nice to sprinkle a little bit of, if you have some fresh herbs, just sprinkle that on too. That's just some fresh parsley. And then you're ready to serve, and remember, serve it immediately or it will wilt. But there are all kinds of other uses for French dressing. Say if you make it in a jar. I just got a preserving jar and I made it in that and shake it all up. And I can use it on all kinds of other things. And something very nice and a very French salad is one which uses endive. And the British, again, to mix everyone else, call endive chicory. But we call it endive mostly. And this is a long, sort of shiny root. And, not a root, what is it? Anyway, it's a long, shiny, leafy thing. And it has a stem here and then a point. And it's a pale color, and it should never get any darker than sort of a greenish yellow. And this is all grown in Belgium, and it's grown with earth all up over it, and that's what keeps it white. And when you buy it, be sure that you buy endive that feels crisp, and also the ends are tightly together. And that means that it's the freshest and nicest. And this is a delicious vegetable, and you can use it either as a cooked vegetable or in salad. And if you're going to serve it, the leaves whole, see there's that little point, cut that little one off, because sometimes those points are a little bit withered. And you can, and then if you've got a withered leaf like that, you can eat it yourself, but not put it in the salad. And you can just separate all the leaves into their long pieces, or if for another effect you might want to cut it into pieces like this. And then you can make a very nice salad out of that. And a wonderful combination that the French use a great deal is endives and beets. And this French dressing, which we call French dressing, the French call vinaigrette. And that means because it has vinegar in it. So if you ever see artichokes a la vinaigrette, you would know that this is really just a French dressing. I'm going to put the chopped in the bottom and then arrange, like the spokes of a wheel, some more endive around. You can do almost anything with this that you want. Fantastic decorations. I don't think that endive, if it's good and fresh and the top is well closed, I don't think endive needs washing anyway. And I think it is true what many people say, that if you let endive soak in water, it becomes bitter, because it does also have a slightly bitter taste, which is very pleasant. And then that's arranged like the spokes of a wheel. And then we have some beets. These are just canned julienne of beets, and I've marinated them in the French dressing, and they should be in the French dressing for about half an hour to pick up a nice flavor. And then with this, you do not dress the beets on the endive until just before serving, because the beet juice will then get all over the endive. And having let it soak in the dressing, the beets have taken on an extremely nice flavor. And then there's a little topping, put on a little bit of fresh parsley. That really is a very pretty combination. And then you should, of course, put a little bit of dressing over the endive leaves. Or you could have tossed the endive in dressing just before you put it on the plate. And so we have our endive and beet salad, which is very French. And then there are all kinds of other things that you can use also. You don't have to use the exotic ones like the endive. You can do just a very simple little salade de tomate, or a tomato salad. And this the French use very often as a first course. It's just a little appetizer. And for this one, we will have a little dish in France called a ravier, and sprinkle just a little tiny bit of chopped scallion or shallot in the bottom of the pan, of the dish, and then put on a tiny bit of parsley, and then take your tomatoes and cut the stem end out, and then just slice it. And if you're ever going to slice tomatoes, you want to be sure that you have a sharp knife. That's really the illustration of the sharp knife, if it will cut a tomato. So I'm taking that little stem end out, and then for the stem on the bottom, just cutting it right down. Then I'll put these little end pieces in the bottom, because they're never as pretty. And then just arrange the tomato slices on top. I should have had another tomato in there, but I don't want to slice too many of these for you. And then put on a tiny bit of salt, which brings out the flavor. And then a little itsy pinch of sugar, and that also brings out the flavor. Usually if you're doing French things, they have a horror of sugar, but it's very good in tomatoes. And then cover it with some more chopped scallions, and then a little bit more parsley, and then put on some French dressing, some vinaigrette, and then let these sit for half an hour or so before serving. If it's a very hot day, you could let them sit in the refrigerator. But this makes it a very agreeable dish, and it certainly improves tomatoes, especially, I mean, if you don't have great, wonderful, unseasoned tomatoes. And now you can do, these are small salads, and let's make a great big combination one as a main course, and there's a great big platter. And then with these, you want to be sure if this is going to have a lettuce base, and we have our salad that's already tossed, you want to be sure that you season the lettuce before you arrange it on the platter. Because if you do one of these combination salads and have a beautiful arrangement and then have to toss it to get the dressing off of it, it ruins your effect. So I'm putting the salad on either side. And then we're going to have a combination of these are canned kidney beans. And these have been also marinated in French dressing. And I'm going to put those down the middle. You could use a chicken salad or tuna fish or whatever you like, but always let it marinate in the French dressing first. And then instead of the ubiquitous cucumber, I'm using sliced raw zucchini, again, which has been marinated in the French dressing for about half an hour. And this marination lets them pick up lots of nice flavor. And then another nice raw vegetable is raw mushrooms, which have also been steeped in the dressing. So I'll put those, let's see where. I'll put a little group at either side. This can go on and on. There are all kinds of raw things that are simply delicious with the dressing on them. And we have also some hard-boiled eggs. But if you just be sure to dress each item separately in a little separate bowl, you can then assemble your salad very quickly. And you'll be sure that you have one that is lovely tasting. Then you can add anything else that you can think of that would be nice. I'll put on a little more tomato. There goes a tomato on each side. And then you want to be sure and have some color accents. So I'm going to use some black olives because they're very pretty. And then just to finish off, pour a little more dressing on. You already have quite a bit of dressing on everything, but you want to be sure that you have enough because that's what gives it its lovely flavor. And then put on a little bit of chopped parsley and you're ready to go. But be sure and just arrange this at the last minute so that it will be beautifully fresh and crisp, and then you're ready to serve. And here we're having a group of green salads of all kinds. You'll remember what we had. Here is our beautiful crisp green tossed salad, and here is the endive beet salad, and here is our little salade de tomate à la française, which is so good. And I'm going to serve you some of our great vegetable combination. And this is really a whole meal in itself, and you could just serve with it some cheese. And if you're going to serve wine with it, you could serve a Riesling wine, but be sure that you have just a tiny little bit of dressing in the salad. Very, very little. I mean, vinegar in, because the vinegar would kill the wine. So just remember that that word salad means so many things besides just the old combo of lettuce and tomato and an iceberg and cucumbers. So be daring. Launch yourself into the green outer space of the salad cosmos, and who knows, you may end up with a delicious new mouth-watering star. That's all for today on The French Chef. This is Julia Child. Bon appétit.